Hello, everyone. Today we are here to go through integration procedure, which is all about the advanced capabilities that we have. Integration procedures are declarative server-side processing. Today, I'm here, Anchal, working as Senior Technical Architect at Salesforce. Before we go through the session, here are some key things to keep in mind. The forward-looking statement, which is all about that whenever you make a purchasing decision, it should be based on what's currently available, not based on what is going to be a GA. Thank you, everyone, for coming out of their busy days, your meetings, your family gatherings, etc. So thank you in here for taking out the time today to learn more about Omni Studio integration procedures. We have gone through a previous recording wherein we talked about integration procedures basic, and today we are going to cover integration procedures, the advanced capabilities, and hope you are going to enjoy the same. In today's agenda, we are going to talk about loop blocks, the list actions, long-running integration procedures, and handling exceptions and rollback on errors. First, we'll go through loop blocks. In here, we see that the loop blocks basically iterate over the items in a data array to repeat the actions in the loop block for each an item. This is very similar to what we write in Apex as for loops. I'm also going to flip to my Salesforce org and show you how it is being created in here itself. So first I'll go through what the structure looks like. So in integration procedures, once you have defined the integration key capability, parameters like type and subtype, that is where you can drag and drop the loop block. This one will basically contain the element name, the loop list that you want to pass. It's good to know that the loop list should be an array. That is what you want to pass to a loop. Now it will take each and every element of that loop of the loop array. So every array, the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will take all those elements each one by one. It will parse through any other action that we drop into the loop block, and it is going to then give you the output. In here, it is also good to know that you can execute this loop based on certain conditions that you want to identify. So there in the input, you can define that you want to perform this loop block only when you meet certain criteria. So that is also the possibility here. I'm going to go to my Salesforce org, and in here, I have my advanced Apex Rs. Here, if you see, I am currently using the same thing that I have shown. I'm using the loop block, which is a part of the available components and is in under groups. You would see the structure. Here you can define the procedure configuration. This is all about, I'm just defining the type and the subtype. I don't have to define anything else here. I have dragged and dropped a loop block. Here, the important thing is to note is that I have already given an input parameter, say names. So names in here contains two array elements, name and two names basically, Smith and Jones. And if you go to the properties, what you would see is that the loop list name is what I have given as the names, which is equivalent to the names which is coming in here. And the output of my loop should be the data after extract action 1. So this is very important because my loop output will be available as part of this node. And how am I going to get that loop output is based on this data after extract action. What does this data after do? This data after is using this data after extract interface, which is called as extract first name. In here, when we give an input to say the last name, what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for all the contacts whose last name is the name that I have given, like Smith and Jones, and I'm going to give the output of the first name. The way it would look like in here is that any name that I give is going to take as input for this one. It is going to execute this extract action, and it is going to give me the output of, say, in this format, name, first name, and last name. If you see in here, what I have also done is that when I'm passing the input parameter, I'm not directly passing the name as an input. So if you see in this loop block, names is passed as a list, as an array. But in data after extract, I'm not passing the array by itself. What I'm passing is names colon name. So it will basically, if you see this one, this is going to take Smith once, and then it is going to take Jones once. So the execution will happen 2 times. So in the loop, the number of array elements are 2. So it is going to execute 2 times. Now in the filter value, this name should be equivalent to what you're going to pass as an input to your data wrap. This is how the loop block is created, and any output that you want. So it should be relevant to what you are getting as an output to your data wrapper. So here, if you see, you are getting data wrapper output as name first name and name last name. If you want to add any additional parameters, you can add them in the additional output also. So if you see the data raptor extract one, so this is my data raptor name. That is what I have taken as an output to my node that I'm creating in here. And in my response action, so if you guys remember from the integration procedures basics session, at this point of time, whenever we write a response action, it is all about returning or ending the integration procedure transaction. So here I'm going to return the full data JSON. Let's look into, first let's go into the contacts that have this name, or maybe we can figure out the list of all the contacts that have the last name that they have. So I'm going to go to contacts. And here, if I'm going to click on all contacts, you would see I have Carol, White, Stamos, Minor, Jones, Smith, Amos. So all this is what I can use as my input variable. When I come in here, I have taken Smith and Jones. I can go and change to say Minor. I'm going to change one of them. Now, here, if you see, in this case, I haven't done anything. So I'm going to execute now. Ideally, what it should do is, I'll walk you through the response here. In this case, you would see the execution sequences, the loop block, and the data raptor execution happened twice. Now, let me go and add third element. Now, this is, I am going to take one of the names, Jones, or maybe Amos is what I can take. Now here, if you see, sorry. So here, if I am going to execute now, you would see in the execution sequence, you have 3 elements. So that means depending on the number of elements you have in an array, 0, 1, 2, all these are the number of executions that you are going to see. In here, there is a possibility to see through the log debug that anytime you in here in the loop block, the input is nothing but this array. So this is what we have defined as names is the input that I'm using in the loop block. Now, when I see the loop block by itself, you would see that what it did is in the result, you would see in here the first time when it called Smith, it came up with the first name John, and the iteration was successful. The first time I gave Minor, it came with the first name as Geoff. When it gave Amos, it came as John. So these are the basically the outputs that you would see in here. Now, this also shows the 3 times the data wrapper has been executed. Most of these will remain the same. That's something that you would see as an output. Now, in here, if you see that, let's say in this loop block, I'm just going to work through this loop block. So all these actions is what you can use at a later point of time to address what are the options that are available when you want to call this integration procedure, like use queuable, disable metadata cache, reset cache, Omni Analytics, queuable, chainable, use continuation, chainable. So these are the important things that you should look. Now, if I just focus on the I'm going to minimize this. If I just focus on the loop block, you would see I have Smith Jones. I have minor Joff, and I have because I used like, you would see in my data raptor the condition is like. That is why I'm seeing two outputs of this block. Uh, for Amos, John, and Stamos, Edward. So these are the two outputs that we are seeing. Now, if you that's the whole idea of doing a list, basically doing a loop, and in the loop you pass the parameter of a list, and this is going to be your output. So if I just see the loop one, this is what is the output that you would see. This is your output. And this can be then used by any of your next set of actions. Now moving on, I'm going to talk about list actions. List actions basically allow you to merge multiple lists by matching values of specified list items JSON node. The key thing to note is that the matching that you're going to do will happen based on the nodes that you have. In this case, a basic merge matches the node's name exactly. And there are two types of list merge that you can have, a basic merge and an advanced merge. Basic merge is all about matching the node's name exactly. And when you do an advanced merge, it ensures that the different names or the elements that are residing at different levels are coming in the list properly or not. So here the order there are multiple things to be defined when you're doing a list merge. When you pull in the list merge element into your integration procedure or the step in the integration procedure, you would see there are multiple properties that you have to define. What should be a merge list order? So anytime you bring in two lists, it is going to merge them in that particular sequence. If you want to enable advanced merge, you can do that as well. And the name of the JSON node that must match for entries to be merged. So here you can say that, you want to merge based on IDs. That can work as well. When in this case, this one match advanced merge is primarily used when you want to match nodes which are with different name or nodes residing at different levels in the list. Third one is name of the JSON that must match for entries to be merged. And in here you have when merge fields are all null, specify whether to treat them as matching or not. In here, when you say has primary, it specifies the list element in the output. Now I'm going to go through the basic advanced list that we have. Basic list I'm going to go through. In here, if you see, I have a list action. I have defined two data raptor extract. To these two data raptor extract, the first one is getting addresses and second one is getting the birth dates. In my get addresses, it is basically a query on your contact. And when I'm querying on the contact, I'm checking if it is I'm checking if my account ID is equal to the ID that I'm passing. Once I define that, my output is going to, let me just reload it quickly. Now here, when I'm going to load the I'm basically querying on contact. Now, if I'm going to see an output, the output would be the contact first name, last name, mail cities. This is the address. So this is my output: contact, state, ID, last name, first name, street and city. And I'm going to use ID to match. In here, while I'm doing a get birthdays, also I'm querying on contact with a similar criteria. But in here, I'm also saying but my output is varying. So my output is a birth date, first name, last name, and the ID. This is going to be my output. So just to make sure that we are in the right record, what we have done is that when I want to merge these two lists, I have basically defined the list order. The list order is first I'll extract the addresses, but then I'll have the birth dates, and then I'm going to use merge using my ID in here. If I want to sort, I will be sorting it by last name and then by first name. So this is how I'm going to define my list merge capability. In my response, I'm going to define any response that's coming up that can be taken from the list action. So list action is taken as a send JSON path, and I'm going to give the name of contact merge here. If I may query this record, I don't have an account with this name. So I'm going to search for global media. So global media has three contacts associated to it. So I'm going to replace the ID. And when I execute, you would see that I have got only 3 records. So 3 are the contacts that we have. The first one gave us address in here. So we have all the addresses. We have all in here, but we do not see the birth dates. So let's see what happened. So when I see the addresses, this is the address. And in my birth dates, I do not have any birthdays which is available. So let's go to one of the contacts and enter their birth date. So let's say the birthday here is 8/3/1989. Now, when I go back in here and I click on execute, you would see that for one of the users whose name is John Amos, where I entered just the birth date here, it should be here. So now this is the birth date and I'm able to see the birth date information. So this is how I am merging the 2 records in here. The same single record wherein I'm basically merging 2 lists in to show the output. Now, there is also a possibility of using multiple merge that you want to do for an advanced version. What that would vary is when you are coming in here, you are going to use an advanced option. So this is an enhancement to what I had shown previously. In here, you would see I have got the addresses, I have got the birth dates, but in this birth dates, this is a version 2. When I'm doing a version 2 in here, you would see that my output is get the contact's birth date, but instead of the first name and last name, I'm using FN and LN, which is not similar to what we have done in the previous one. This is LN, FN, and previously we were using last name and first name. And this is also the output of your get addresses. But in the list action, if you see, I'm first the sequence of my merge is first get the merge or the use the addresses and then use the birth dates. And when I'm merging it, I'm using the advanced capability. Here, the list key is when I'm using the extract address contact, extract address contact birthdays contact is this is what I'm matching. This is what I'm trying to match. Now it has primary and then you would sort by first name and last name. So now I'm going to go to preview. I'm going to get the global media account and see what the output is. In this case, if you notice, my first name and last name is different in both the address and in both the in here, if you see, my first name and the last name is different in what I get in addresses. So in addresses, I get an output of first name and last name as an output, first name and last name, but in birth date, I get FN and LN. And when I'm merging, I'm using to merge based on the first name and last name. This is this is how I am grouping them. And now in here, you would see in here, you would see that I don't have any primary list key or any other information for me to help in terms of identifying the common keys. And if you go to preview, you would see that I have my first name, last name, and I still have 3 records. I'm trying to match these records based on the first name and the last name. I still have these 3 records available for me. So this is how the advanced merge works. And you would see the birth date information available for John Amos. Now, moving on to the next one, this is all about running or doing a long running transactions. We know that most of the time when the integration procedures are called from OmniScripts or Flex cards, there is a possibility that the transactions that are running on the server side are taking longer than expected. Sometimes these can be just the Salesforce governor limits that are being hit, or it can be an external system that is taking too long to reply to this to us. Now, Salesforce governor limits are basically the usage caps that ensure that efficient processing and use of resources are happening on the Salesforce platform. Limits can present challenges to team using OmniScripts when the transaction in integration procedure exceeds the governor limit. So once the limit has reached, Salesforce ends the transaction, and that is where the integration procedures fail. That is why we have long running transactions to support. You can use chainable and queuable chainable settings to avoid these governor limits being hit. And you can also chain one or more specific long running steps. This is very similar to what we have in Salesforce as terms of queuable, chainable capabilities. So this is following exactly the same principle. In here, when you are calling the integration procedure from an OmniScript, you would see you can define 3 types. Invoke mode can be default or non-invoke, fire and forget, and invoke fire and forget, and invoke non-blocking. So these are the 3 options that you get from an OmniScript when calling an integration procedure. With those capabilities, when you want to use future, you would say that the call has been made to integration procedure, but it does not have to be invoked immediately. It can happen as and when the resources are available on the Salesforce side. So when you want to use the chainable, use the setting when you want to make a synchronous, use the setting for synchronous apex governor limits. What that means is it will immediately invoke. So whenever you call this integration procedure from OmniScript, this integration procedure will be immediately called. And if there are any time there is a transaction is going to hit the governor limits, before that itself, it is going to separate out the transaction and it is going to run in a different transaction. So that is what is chainable. It basically ensures that you do not hit the Salesforce governor limit. Now you can use continuation, use queuable, and use queuable chainable. Queuable chainable is primarily used when for asynchronous apex to reach the asynchronous apex governor limits. In here, when we do long running transactions, what we have generally seen is that Salesforce as a platform prohibits DML operations before any HTTP external callout. Therefore, whenever there is an HTTP action follows a data after post action, you can enable chain on step for that data after post action. What that will do is this will avoid you hitting a Salesforce limit, and it will allow you to separate the transaction of the post call or the load call in Salesforce. So this is where all this comes in. Now in here, you can say that when you say chain on step, this will allow you to run this transaction on its own. And how you would do that? There is an options you can pass in the integration procedure options configuration. This chainable is false. You would make it to chainable true. This is how you would call this integration procedure. And then you would also click on this step to make sure that you are able to configure this integration procedure as a long running transaction. Now, when we do a long running transaction, the capabilities that we have primarily talked about in here is chainable equal to true and queuable chainable equal to true. So chainable and queuable chainable all have its own limitation as per the Salesforce platform. And there are certain default limitations that we have put in terms of default settings to help you make sure that we are not hitting the Salesforce governor limits. You can keep them as is. So that means the default functionality applies. If you want to change it, you can do that as well. But I would suggest that keep it to default so that you don't have a headache of maintaining it explicitly. Now, when it comes to queuable chainable, again, these limits can be updated to meet your requirements, and in here as well, it's not mandatory that you have to update them. You can keep them to default whatever they are if you don't want to maintain them. Now, moving on to the next complex capability of integration procedure. In here, we are going to talk about handling exceptions and rollback on error. As you see, there is a possibility that whenever we are calling an integration procedure, let's talk about this scenario. We have an Omni script. In the Omni script, what we are getting is an information of an account and a contact. Now, when we have an account and a contact or opportunity being created, we want to create an opportunity, create an account and associate that opportunity only when there are no errors occurring. Now, if you see, this is a very common use case. So create an account and the associated opportunity only when there are no errors. But in case there are any errors, what we need to make sure is that no data gets inserted. This is a classic example. So you would see a data raptor wherein we have an account being created, and to that account, we have a new opportunity being created wherein I'm using the account which is reflected here. In case of any errors, what I need to do is I need to roll back on error. This is a out of the box configuration for the load data raptor. Now, once there is an error, what we need to do is, because this whole transaction started from an Omni script. So that means if there is any error, the message should also be displayed on the Omni script. But when we are having any failures in data raptor, what you see is that required fields missing. Those are like very system specific messages. You want to change them to a user specific messages, which feel and look good on the user interaction. Now, that is where the try-catch block of integration procedures come into place. So here you would see that there is a try-catch block. In that try-catch block, there can be failure responses that you identify, the error code, the message, and the detail. Now, in here, what is important is not to forget to check this box, fail on error, block error. What this will make sure is if there is any error, this is the output that you see. Now, in here, we have this create account and opportunity, which we previously saw is one of the data raptors that is defined for rollback on error. So once you have done that and you execute, you would see that there is an error that has been caught, and it will make sure that no account or opportunity has been committed. So in this case, when we see integration procedure, so what we did till now is on data raptor, we enabled rollback on error. On integration procedure, we enabled failed on step. So failed on block error, which is for the try-catch block. And the third thing to do is to make sure that on the integration procedure itself, you are saying rollback on error. So this is the three key things that you would do to make sure that whenever there is an error, you go to the try-catch block and the rollback has happened. In this case, all the changes are committed to the database only after all the operations in the transaction finish, running without any errors. If any error occurs in any of these intermediate steps, the rollback on error option is enabled, which ensures that all the transactions are rolled back. So there is a possibility that, in this case, data raptor post-action account creation, you first created an account and then you created opportunity. Now you want to make sure that the first account is created and then opportunity. And if any of these fails, you want to roll back account, opportunity and account. Unlike previously, it was all in a single data raptor. But if you want to break that step for X number of reasons, because the functionality demands it, this is how you would do it. And now if you want to make sure that anytime the opportunity fails or account fails, all of this should roll back. This will be ensured using your rollback on error checkbox that we have. I'm going to also show you the demo of this one as well. So here I have a try-catch integration procedure. Good thing to note is that I have, you can check this rollback on error. This is important when you have multiple steps in it. In this case, I don't have much of steps, so I can choose to uncheck as well. So I'm going to keep it checked for now. when you see try catch block, you would see that I have defined failure response as one failure response, and this is a normal text I'm providing, which is all about you must provide a last name. My functionality of the try catch block is that whenever I pass a last name, I should be able to create a contact here. Now, how am I passing the create contact is basically I'm passing all the inputs in this method. I'm passing all. If you see this the create contact, what it is going to use as an input is your last name. So I need to pass this last name as an input to my data after to my integration procedure. So let's say I'm going to pass some value for now, and we hopefully should have a request or a contact being created. So I'm just keeping it as any input that is happening in the input would go to create contact. And I have also checked fail on step error. In this case, once I want to exit the transaction, I would use a response format here. Now, if you see, as I mentioned, I have taken care of three things. In my create contact, I should do rollback on error. I should do in my try catch block fail on block error. And in my create contact fail on step error. And in my procedure, I should do a rollback on error. So all these I have put in to ensure that we do anytime we hit an issue, we are going to roll back. So I'm going to give the last name as Bharadwaj. So here, if you see, I have got the full response. Let me actually do once more. I would go and update, return the full JSON. So this should return. I will change this to say Kaushik. When I do that, you would see in here in the create contact try catch block, I was able to create a contact with this last name. And if I go to this ID account, this contact ID, I would be able to see the contact associated to that. So this is my contact that is being created. Let me also go to the contacts list. See, this is how it is being created now. So I'll just go to all contacts, and this is my Kaushik that is being created. Now I would go in now and delete the Kaushik. So what I ideally should get is that you require a name or a last name. So if you see in here, I'm going to go through each and every blog. So if you see the create contact, the input that was given was empty. Last name is empty. Now, when you see create contact, what I got is a more of a system error. Required fields are missing, last name. This is what I got. But this information, I do not want to show it to my customers in the UI. So what I'm going to get in here is a failure response. This is what I can use to display that message to my customers. Also, you would see that we have rollback equal to true. And if you want to pass additional parameters, you can do so that as well. So this is the output that we have. This is the output that you see here as well for your complete JSON output. So required fields are missing, and this is your complete JSON. So this is these are the most advanced capabilities of integration procedures. Hopefully this session was of help to you. And with that, I would like to conclude today's presentation and hope you guys had a good time, good learning experience, and see you guys really very soon building some of the Omni Studio capabilities of integration procedures. Thank you, everyone.